Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Our Stony Acres. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about seeds that you should start indoors versus seeds that you shouldn't ever start indoors. And we're going to kind of go through, as what I've done is broken all of the seeds down into kind of 4 different categories, and we're going to go through and talk about each of those, which ones we absolutely should, which ones we absolutely shouldn't be starting indoors. So that's what we're going to cover today. Before we get started, please make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click that notification bell so that you get noticed every time I release new videos. Make sure that you go ahead and jump over to Instagram as well and follow us over there. I'm doing a lot of fun stuff, trying to get out in the garden a lot and talk to you guys over there on Instagram, so go follow that. And then while you're at it, stick around to the end of this video. I'm going to talk to you about a 7-day seed starting challenge that we are going to be doing this spring, and I want to give you guys a little information and get you on the wait list for that. So stick around to learn more about that, okay? All right, so let's get started on what seeds you should be planting indoors versus what seeds you should never plant indoors. And I get a lot of questions about this, so I thought I would do a video on it. And I've broken it down into 4 different groups. And so the first group are the seeds that you should absolutely be starting indoors every time, okay? Now, I will probably get a little bit of pushback from a few people, especially if you live in the warmer zones. You may be able to get away with planting these guys outside, but my opinion is really it's best for you to start all of these different crops indoors first, just because it gives you that head start. It gives you a nice, good, healthy transplant. All of these transplant well out into the garden, and so I just don't see any reason why you shouldn't be starting all of these plants indoors, okay? So let's go through the list. First off is the tomato family. So this would be things like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and tomatillos, okay? All of those do so much better if you give them a 6 to 8 week head start by planting them indoors. So 100% you ought to be planting those indoors pretty much no matter where you live, okay? Next on the list, this one will be a little bit more controversial, and that is the brassica family. So anything that's related to cabbage. So things like cabbage, cauliflower, kohlrabi, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, any of those, I think you should start indoors. And my argument for starting them indoors is that I would rather, on my planting date, I would rather have a 6-week-old start planted out in the garden that is going to get done ready a lot quicker and be ready to harvest before that like hot weather comes in and everything. And so my argument is they do so well, they transplant so well, why not get them started indoors and get them out into the garden, okay? So that's the next ones. Now, next on the list is onions and leeks. Now, for those of you that have really warm weather, you may be able to get away with planting onions and leeks directly as seeds out in the garden. But for us, onions take about 8 months. So we start our onions indoors on about January 15th, and we don't end up harvesting until about August 15th. So that's 8 months. And we really don't have that much time out in the garden to be planting by seed and have them come to maturity. And so we like to start our onions about 10 to 12 weeks before they need to go outside, and then we'll put them outside, and that gets us a good on-time harvest in the middle of the summer when they're going to be doing their best and maturing their best. So onions and leeks, I feel like unless you live somewhere that's really warm and you don't have a lot of snow and issues like that, I think you should be starting those indoors, or you should be planting them from sets or starts, okay? And then last on the list of things that I really think you ought to be starting indoors is celery. So celery is one that I just feel like does so much better if you put a transplant out into the garden. They take quite a while to mature anyways, and it just seems like to me that seeds versus transplants, the transplants always do so much better, okay? So those are the ones that I feel like you absolutely should be starting indoors, okay? Let me know in the comments what you think. Next is a category that you can plant indoors, but they also do really, really well being direct seeded out into the garden, okay? So these are your choice. Usually you're going to be choosing timing-wise for these. So if you live in a shorter growing season climate, you may be starting these indoors, or if you want to have space in your garden for other things, you'll kind of do timing and plant these guys indoors. So First in this group would be greens. So we're talking here anything like lettuce, arugula, endive, Swiss chard, spinach, kale, collards. Any of those will do really well if you plant them indoors, but they'll also do really well if you just go ahead and direct seed them out in the garden. So you can choose. Now, the one little caveat that I would give you there is spinach doesn't transplant as well as some of the other leafy greens because it has this really long tap root that doesn't like to be disturbed. So spinach doesn't transplant quite as well, but still does a pretty good job, okay? Next on the list is the legume family. So anything like beans or peas. So your broad beans, your green beans, your snap peas, your shelling peas, your snow peas, any of those, you can choose. They'll do really well planted directly out in the garden, but they also transplant well, and so you could plant them indoors. And that's especially important if you have a short growing season, and so you may want to do some seed starting indoors to give you a little extra time for maturity out in the garden. But beans and peas, good one to go either way. Another one would be okra. I don't have a lot of experience growing okra, so I'll have to kind of let you guys give me some comments down below. But okra, from what I understand, will do well started indoors or directly seeded into the garden. And then the last one on this list would be your annual herbs. So we're talking things here like parsley or basil or cilantro, oregano, any of those that are considered an annual. I prefer to plant those indoors first and then set them out into the garden because, you know, like basil for a good example, I would rather plant a basil plant in my garden on my last frost date than put a seed in because I'll get a harvest so much sooner. But most of those annual herbs will also do pretty well if you plant them directly by seed out in the garden. So you can kind of choose. I lean towards starting those indoors, where some of the others, like the beans and the peas, I'll put those out directly in the garden and not worry about it inside. So that's our next class. This third class, I'll probably get some pushback from some people, but the reason why, and it's one family essentially, squash family, okay? So all of the squash family, which includes melons, I prefer to plant those directly out in the garden. And the reason why is they do not like to be transplanted. They don't like their roots to be disturbed, and so they really, really struggle when you transplant them out into the garden. The same with corn. That would be another one that I would add to this list. So anything in the squash family and any melons would really prefer to be planted directly out in the garden. But I recognize that some of you have very short growing seasons, and so you need to get a head start. So the way you do that is by, and this is about the only time that I advocate using like the little peat pots, because you can plant those directly out in the garden. So you can start your seeds indoors and then just put the entire pot in the ground out in the garden. Another good idea for that would be like the toilet paper tubes. And if you want to see a little video that I did on using toilet paper tubes as a seed starting pot, there's a link right here. But anything that you can do to not disturb the roots of squash and melons and corn, which corn really, it does so well planted out in the garden. I don't know why you would want to start it indoors, but any of those, if you can try to not disturb those roots, then that would be better. So using pots that you can then put directly out in the garden is a great idea for that. The other thing is with the squash and melons, you also don't want to let the plants get very big if you're going to start them indoors. You want to maybe do 3 or 4 weeks before you plant them out, and that's it. You don't want to get big bushy plants. You just want little tiny plants with maybe 2 sets of true leaves to go out in the garden, because those smaller plants will handle that transplant shock better. So that class would also include cucumbers. So any of your summer squashes, any of your winter squashes, cucumbers, melons, pumpkins, any of those. Try to get them planted directly out in the garden if you can, but if you have to start them indoors, 3 to 4 weeks before, and be careful with those roots, okay? And then the last group is a group of plants that we absolutely should not plant indoors, and instead always you should be planting these out in the garden, direct seed, okay? And that would be anything that we are growing for the root. So anything that is, we're going to harvest the stuff that grows underground, okay? So carrots, turnips, radishes, beets, parsnips, rutabagas, all of those do not transplant well at all. And so you want to plant those directly out in the garden. They're all cool season crops, so you can get them out really early. They should do well in the garden, but they will not do well if you grow them indoors and then try and transplant them out later. It just does not happen well at all, okay? Another one would be potatoes. So regular, traditional potatoes, we're always going to be planting those directly out in the garden. You don't want to like try to grow some indoors and then take them out of the pot and plant them in the ground later. Now, if you're going to grow them in containers, you could start those containers indoors and then move the entire container outside, but we don't want to disturb the plant once it's been planted. Sweet potatoes, totally different beast. So they're different completely. You start those from starts and totally different concept than all of those other root crops. So sweet potatoes you do start from starts, but everything else that we're getting the stuff from underground, you want to plant those directly out in the garden. You don't start those seeds indoors, okay? All right, so that is our list, and I have included a written list down below of the 4 different groups and how you should be dealing with those. All right, one other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is a really fun event that we have coming up this spring that I wanted to invite you to come and join, and that is our 7-day seed starting challenge. So this is going to be a blast. We did a challenge last year and it was a lot of fun, and so this year we're going to try something with seed starting. If you happen to be watching this video and it's not 2022, go ahead and click the link down below because there's probably a pretty good chance that we'll be doing this in future years as well. So here's the plan. We're going to do 7 days of about 15 to 20 minute pre-recorded instruction on seed starting. So I'll give you a different aspect of seed starting every day for 7 days. We'll have a task for you to complete every day, and by the time we get to the end of those 7 days, you'll be planting your own seedlings. You'll be getting those ready to go and planting those seedlings. Then we'll have an extra day, day 8, where I'm actually going to do a live video. We'll probably do it on Zoom, and you guys can come and ask me questions, and we'll kind of wrap up the program then. All of the other days, those 7 days, will be pre-recorded, so you don't have to worry about showing up at 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. You'll be able to watch them anytime during the day that fits into your schedule. And then we're going to have a workbook that will go along with it. I've got some sponsors that have offered to do prizes, so we'll have a prize drawing at the end for participants to possibly win a prize as well. So this is going to be a lot of fun. I think we're really going to enjoy this. I've already seen a lot of interest. We've had 75 people that have said that they would like to come and join this. Now, one thing that I need to make you aware of, this one's going to be a lot of work for us. So our team, which is basically me and my wife, are going to have to do a lot of work to get this put together. We're already starting to film videos and things like that. And so this isn't something that we can do for free. So this will be a paid challenge. The whole 7-day program will be $25 total. And so if that sounds like something you're interested in and something that you can afford, there's a link down in the description that you can click on that will take you over to the wait list. We're getting really close to pinning down the date. It'll be the first part of February. We may do it again in the end of February. So click on the link down below. You can sign up for the wait list, and once I have everything pinned down, I'll send out a link where you guys can go and actually sign up for the course and pay your fee and all that kind of stuff. But this will be a lot of fun. Super excited about it. We did a challenge last spring, and everybody just had a blast. So I really think this is going to be a lot of fun, and I'd like to invite you to come and join that as well. So click the link down in the description to join that wait list, and we'll let you know when we have the actual firm date. Okay, that, my friends, is all I have for you for this week. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go follow us over on Instagram as well. And everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week. Happy gardening.